His phone buzzed at 6:47 in the morning. Christmas morning. Marcus Webb did not move right away. He lay still for a moment. Listen. Through the thin wall between rooms, he could hear Nia turning over in her bed. She was 9 years old. She still believed in the slow magic of Christmas mornings. She still came in quiet and pressed her face against his cheek to see if he was awake. He waited for that. It did not come. He picked up the phone. The notification was a voicemail. From a number he recognized. From the number that belonged to Derek Harlan, Regional Manager, Southwest Division, and the man who had spoken to Marcus only twice in 3 years. Both times in corridors. Both times while walking away. Marcus pressed play. The message was 43 seconds long. He listened to all of it. He set the phone down on the nightstand. He straightened the charger cable beside it. He folded his hands on his chest and stared at the ceiling for exactly 90 seconds. Then he got up. He went to the kitchen. He started the coffee. Nia came in at 7:12, her socks mismatched, her hair still flat on one side. She looked at the tree. She looked at him. She said, "Did Santa come?" He said, "He came." She said, "You're smiling weird." He said, "I'm just tired." What Derek Harlan did not know, what he would not know for another 4 months, was that Nia had been awake since 6:30. She had been sitting on the floor of her room with her ear pressed gently to the wall. She had heard everything. Marcus Webb had not always worked night inventory at a regional grocery distribution center. Before Nia was born, he had spent 6 years as a logistics analyst for a mid-sized freight company in Dallas. He was the kind of employee who built the systems other people used, who found the errors 3 levels upstream before they became visible. He had a gift for pattern, for seeing inside the noise of data and identifying the thread that didn't belong. His supervisor at the freight company had once told him, in front of a room full of colleagues, that he was the best quiet thinker the organization had ever hired. That was before Claire. Claire died 18 months after Nia was born. A blood clot. Sudden and silent. The kind of event that takes a man who has spent his whole life thinking 5 steps ahead and removes the ability to think past tomorrow. He moved back to Phoenix. His mother was there. Nia needed stability. He needed something that did not require him to be sharp or strategic or present in the particular way that grief makes impossible. He needed to show up, move boxes, scan barcodes, and go home. He found the job at Meridian Distribution in 2019. Night inventory. 4th shift. The role that nobody wanted. He did not tell anyone what he used to do. Nia was 6 then. When he picked her up from his mother's in the mornings, she always ran to him the same way. Full speed, both arms open. He was the thing she ran to without calculating. That trust was the only measurement that mattered. Derek Harlan had been regional manager for 2 of those 3 years. He arrived from a corporate restructuring, which meant he arrived with something to prove. He wore his authority the way men do when they have not yet decided whether they earned it. He walked the floor of the distribution center once a quarter. He called it connecting with ground-level operations. He never remembered anyone's name twice. "You're the one who resequences the scan lanes on Tuesdays, right?" Derek asked Marcus during a floor walk in October. Marcus said, "No." Derek moved on. It was Marcus who resequenced the scan lanes. He had been doing it for 2 years. The modification reduced missorts by approximately 22%. There was no announcement. There was no memo. He just changed it one night and it worked and he went home. He did not raise his hand. Derek Harlan looked at the numbers and saw improvement. He sent himself a congratulatory email about operational efficiency. He never looked at who had done what. The seed was already planted. The reversal was already growing. Marcus did not know this yet either. January was when it started in earnest. Meridian Distribution had been acquired in December by a parent company called Northgate Logistics. Northgate had a culture of aggressive cost trimming in the first quarter following acquisition. Everyone at the center knew someone who had already been let go. The anxiety moved through the building like weather. Derek Harlan called a staff meeting on the second Thursday of January. Mandatory attendance. shift. He stood at the front of the break room with a binder no one else was allowed to see and spoke for 40 minutes about right sizing and talent alignment, and the distinction between institutional knowledge and institutional habit. He looked around the room as he said this last phrase. His eyes landed on Marcus. Marcus was standing near the back wall. He had a paper cup of coffee. He did not look away. After the meeting, Derek found him in the hallway. Marcus, right? Yes. You've been here, what, 3 years? 4 in March. Right. I want to be transparent with you. The night inventory team is flagged for consolidation. We're pulling 2 full-time positions. I think you'd want to know that. Marcus looked at him. I appreciate it. Of course. I want to be fair. Some of these guys have been here a long time and it makes the conversation harder. You seem like you'd land on your feet. Marcus said nothing. Resilient people always do, Derek added. He walked away. In the break room that afternoon, a woman named Carol Okafor had overheard the whole exchange from inside the supply closet, where she'd been doing an end-of-shift restock. Carol had been at Meridian for 11 years. She was the closest thing the night crew had to institutional memory. She stood very still and listened. She said nothing to Marcus that day. She did not forget what she heard. That evening, Marcus called Nia before his shift. Hey, baby. Hi, Dad. Are you at work? Heading in. How was school? We did fractions. Miss Pelton says I'm good at them. You are good at them. Are you okay? You sound different. Just tired. Go finish your homework. Okay. I love you. I love you too. He put the phone in his pocket and walked into the building. The second blow came 3 weeks later, at an all-hands Northgate integration meeting held over video call. Derek Harlan presented a personnel review matrix. On the screen, visible to roughly 40 employees, was a spreadsheet, color-coded. Marcus's name was in the red column. The column labeled low retention priority. No explanation. No one asked for one. Marcus sat in the break room with the other night crew members and watched his name on the screen. He picked up his coffee cup. He took a sip. He set it down. Carol Okafor, sitting 2 chairs away, watched his hands. They did not shake. The third blow came through HR, a formal letter with language about performance benchmarks that Marcus had not failed to meet, because no benchmarks had ever been established for his role. The letter referenced a performance review that Marcus had never been given. He read it in his car. He folded it twice. Set it in the glove compartment. He went inside and worked his shift. On December 24th, he arrived for what he expected to be a normal shift. A supervisor named Paul met him at the door. Derek said to send you home. Marcus looked at him. Paul's face said he did not want to be the one delivering this. On Christmas Eve, he said it was a cost measure. Marcus nodded. He went home. On Christmas morning the voicemail arrived. Marcus. This is Derek Harlan, Regional Manager. I'm calling to notify you that your position has been eliminated effective December 26th. This was a structural decision, nothing personal. HR will follow up with paperwork Monday. I hope you enjoy the holiday. 43 seconds. He should have broken. He did not break. The first crisis was the lease. Marcus's rent was $1,340 a month. His last paycheck, processed before the termination and already spent forward, covered January. February was in question. His severance, if it came, would take 4 to 6 weeks according to the HR voicemail that arrived on December 27th, 2 minutes after the automated notice of termination confirmation. 2 days after Christmas, his landlord called. Not to threaten. Mr. Andrade was a decent man, but to ask. He had heard from someone at the management company that the building was being sold. New ownership was coming. The new owner might require proof of employment for all existing month-to-month leases. Marcus listened. I'll get you something in writing, he said. Marcus, are you okay? I'm working on it. He was not okay. He sat at the kitchen table after Nia went to sleep that night and opened his laptop. He had not updated his resume in 4 years. He had deliberately not updated it. He had a version from 2018 that listed his freight analysis work, his certifications, his systems work. It was all still there. He had kept it like a thing he wasn't ready to throw away. He stared at it. He also stared at something else. In a folder on his desktop, the same folder he had used to document his work at Meridian since 2021, was a collection of files. Every scan lane modification, every efficiency report, every process improvement, annotated in his own shorthand. The timestamps were automatic. The authorship was embedded in the metadata. He knew what was in those files. He knew what it would mean if he sent them to the right people at Northgate. He knew that a company acquiring a distribution center would be very interested in understanding the gap between the reported operational improvements and the person actually responsible for them. He could end Derek Harlan's career before the new year. He closed the folder. He opened Nia's school portal instead. Her grades were fine. Her attendance was perfect. Her teacher had left a comment in December. Nia is a careful observer. She notices things before anyone else in the room. He closed the laptop. He had one thing left that was entirely his. It was the decision not to become the kind of man his daughter would someday have to explain to herself. The decision not to weaponize what he knew because he was angry and scared, and it was December and the heat bill was due. His dignity was the last thing he controlled. He would not trade it. The second crisis arrived in the second week of January, when a letter from Northgate Logistics' legal department landed in his email. Not a termination notice. An accusation. The letter alleged that Marcus had accessed proprietary operational data without authorization during his employment. It referenced the same folder he had closed on New Year's Eve. Someone had flagged a system access log. Someone had seen that he had opened those files in late December. The letter requested that he delete the files and sign a non-disclosure agreement. If he did not, it threatened appropriate legal action. He read it 3 times. Slowly, he forwarded it to his cousin Raymond, who had a paralegal certificate and too much time on his hands. Raymond called back in 40 minutes. Marcus, these files, they're yours. You created them. During your employment. You have every right to retain documentation of your own work. I know. So why'd they send this? Because they don't know what I know yet. Marcus printed the letter. He placed it in a folder. He placed the folder behind the folder where he kept Nia's school documents. He did not respond to Northgate Legal. He did not post anything online. He told no one. On a Thursday evening in the 3rd week of January, Nia came home from school and found him at the kitchen table with paperwork spread around him. She did not ask what the paperwork was. She was 9. She read rooms the way her father read data. She sat down across from him. She did not speak. He did not speak. She put her backpack on the floor and pulled out her math homework. She did her homework. He went through his files. The refrigerator hummed. The building's heating system clicked and settled. After 40 minutes she looked up. Dad. You don't have to fix it tonight. He looked at her. Her face was completely serious. He said, I know. She looked back down at her homework. He looked back down at his files. That was all. Somewhere on the other side of the city, Carol Okafor had made a phone call. Marcus did not know about the phone call. He would not know until it was already done. Carol Okafor had worked at Meridian Distribution for 11 years. In those 11 years, she had watched 4 managers arrive and leave. She had watched 2 acquisitions. She had learned the difference between the people who built things quietly and the people who claimed them loudly. She had heard Derek Harlan tell Marcus Webb he would land on his feet, in the same tone a man uses to dismiss something he cannot afford to examine too closely. She had watched the personnel matrix with Marcus's name in red. She had stood in the break room and watched Derek Harlan present efficiency numbers, Marcus's efficiency numbers, to the Northgate integration team as evidence of his own management acumen. She made notes. She was not a dramatic woman. She did not act immediately. She waited until she was certain. On January 8th, 8 days after the new year, She reached out through LinkedIn to a contact she had met at a logistics industry conference 4 years prior. The contact was now a senior operations analyst at Northgate Logistics' parent company. Not a whistleblower. Not a journalist. Just someone who had once told her over terrible conference coffee that she was the most competent person in the room and that the industry needed more people like her. She sent him Marcus's documentation. The original files. Timestamp. Metadata intact. She included a 14-line message that was precise, professional, and devastating. She did not copy Marcus. She did not tell him. She let it move. On January 23rd, a Thursday, Derek Harlan was called into an emergency video conference with the Northgate Integration Leadership Team. He was in the conference room at the Phoenix Distribution Center. The same break room, the same building where he had pointed to Marcus Webb's name in a red column and let 40 people see it. 2 hours into the call, he was informed that an internal audit had been initiated into the attribution of operational efficiency improvements across the Southwest Division for the period 2021 to 2024. He was informed that documentation had surfaced suggesting that improvements reported to corporate had originated with personnel other than those credited. He was informed that falsifying or misrepresenting attribution in a post-acquisition integration review was a material breach of executive conduct policy. Derek Harlan said, "I can explain." The lead auditor on the call, a woman named Sarah Figueroa, said, "We'd prefer that you not." His badge was deactivated at 4:17 p.m. He was escorted from the building at 4:31 p.m. The same building. The same corridor where he had told Marcus he would land on his feet. Paul, the supervisor who had sent Marcus home on Christmas Eve, was in the break room when Derek walked past with his box. Paul did not say anything. He watched. He set down his coffee. Carol Okafor was in the building too. She was doing an end-of-shift restock in the supply closet when Derek walked past. She did not stop restocking. She allowed herself one small private thing. A pause. She looked at the back of his jacket as he walked past the supply closet door. She said nothing at all. Marcus received a phone call that evening from an HR director at Northgate, a man named Gerald, who spoke carefully and at length about the internal audit and its findings and the company's commitment to ensuring accurate attribution of contributions and the possibility of. He paused here. Reinstatement with back pay and a reclassification of his role. Marcus listened. Gerald said, "I want to be transparent about what we found." Marcus said, "I already know what you found." Gerald paused. "We'd like to make this right." Marcus said, "I know." He thanked Gerald. He said he would be in touch with his response after he'd had a few days. He thanked him again. He hung up. He stood in the kitchen. Nia walked in. She had been in her room. She had heard the word reinstatement through the wall. She stood in the kitchen doorway. She looked at him. He was standing in the middle of the kitchen, both hands at his sides, not moving. She walked over and stood beside him. She did not wrap her arms around him in the dramatic way. She stood next to him, shoulder to his arm. Her face turned forward, not up at his. They stood like that for a while. He put his hand on her shoulder. She did not say anything. He did not say anything. That was enough. 4 months later, Derek Harlan's LinkedIn profile was no longer visible to the public. The Southwest Division Regional Manager role had been filled internally, quietly, by a woman named Patricia who had come up through the logistics team and who said almost nothing in meetings but noticed everything. The Phoenix Distribution Center's efficiency numbers continued to improve. Nobody was confused about why. Marcus went back. Not as a night inventory associate. Northgate's reclassification placed him as a senior process analyst, the title that had always matched the work. His pay was restructured. The back pay came through in February. He paid February's rent. He paid March's. He called Mr. Andrade and told him they were good. Mr. Andrade said, "I knew you'd figure it out." Marcus said, "I had help." He brought Carol Okafor a coffee. Black, no sugar because that was what she drank. On the first morning he was back in the building. He set it on the shelf beside her restocking cart. He did not make a speech. He said, "Thank you." She said, "You were always doing the work." I just made sure the right people knew it. He nodded. She went back to restocking. That was the whole conversation. On a Saturday in April, Nia's school held its annual science fair. She had built a model that tracked how missort errors in package routing compounded over time. She had used a dataset she'd asked her father to help her find. Her poster board was neat and careful and slightly too detailed for 4th grade. Her teacher stood in front of it for a long time. Nia stood beside her father with her hands behind her back and waited. He stood next to her, both hands at his sides. Quiet. Her project took first place. On the drive home she said, "Dad." "Yeah." "I heard the voicemail. Christmas. Through the wall." He kept his eyes on the road. "I know," he said. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want you to feel bad." "I know." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Were you scared?" He thought about it. He gave her the true answer. "Yes, but not about the job. I was scared I'd say something I couldn't take back. I was scared I'd stop being who you think I am." She looked out the window. "That's not possible," she said. He did not reply. There was nothing to add. There is a specific kind of power that sustains itself by managing perception. It stacks its claims early. It keeps the room's attention. It covers its tracks with language designed to sound like precision. And for a long time that kind of power works because it fills the silence that quieter people leave behind. Derek Harlan had that power. And he used every piece of it. But power that depends on keeping others small is not power at all. It is fear with a title. Marcus Webb never exposed anything. He never sent those files. He never made the call. He never walked into anyone's office with what he knew. He just did the work, and then he did the work again. And he kept his daughter's trust as the only measure that mattered. The truth found its own way. Usually does. Here is the question I want you to sit with this week. When someone wrongs you publicly and you have the power to destroy them, do you use it? Or do you let the truth do the work? I don't think there's an easy answer. I think most of us would reach for the folder. I think most of us would want to. The question is whether we do. Leave your answer in the comments. Tell me where you stand. And if you know someone who has been underestimated, who has been told they'll land on their feet by someone who was already walking away, share this story with them. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. And sometimes nothing becomes everything. Subscribe to Solo Dad Stories and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. We're here every week for the stories that don't make the news, but should.